I think we're finally ready. Yes, we're finally ready to get started. Thank you for your patience. I'm very sorry. Okay, so yeah, welcome to RITSEC this week, guys. I believe this might be the last education week. I'm not sure yet, but potentially. But thank you for coming. I know it's late in the semester and there's a lot of work, so we appreciate you guys being here. If you guys could go ahead and please sign in, I'll give you like a minute to do that at signin.ritsec.club. We really appreciate it, and it lets us know who's a member, who's showing up, and who's not. So please sign in if you haven't already. Okay, I'm gonna give you less than a minute, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started. Elections, woo! Elections, everyone, get hyped for elections. Let's go. Yeah, Nick.
Hello. So, elections. All right, so you've been nominating, you've been getting ready, you've been gearing up. The campaign trail's heating up now. We've got a lot of nominations in, and a lot of people have accepted nominations. So, just to show everyone at home where we're at, I have this nice little matrix of nominations, and these are accepted nominations. So, we have 3 people running for president, 4 people running from head of research, 4 people for running head of education, 4 people running for competition architect, 3 for secretary, 3 for treasurer, and 1 for PR right now.
Yeah, Adrian for PR.
However, we have still not closed nominations to my surprise. So if you have any other nominations, get them in, I guess. Because democracy is important, but wow, it's a lot of nominations. What?
Sean for president. Yeah, Sean for president.
So yeah, get your. Yeah, okay. So yeah, get your nominations, and I guess you might hear soonish that we're going to close nominations before what we originally said, which was the 10th, because obviously there are a lot of nominations. Remember, each person here must give a presentation, have a Q&A section, and then we'll have a deliberation on each role, and then there will be a vote. So, it's a lot of stuff. It'll be a very long and exciting time. Elections are next week. They will not be in this room. I repeat, they will not start in this room. They will start in the magic spell auditorium thingy. There, I believe, is going to be a walkover crew, which will meet here at 12 and then walk over, or around 11:50. So that way, if you don't know where it is, because I don't know where it is.
I think it's like in the middle of campus.
Yeah, I know the building. I just don't know where the thing is. Yeah, so, but that's where we're going to be for 4 hours. After 4 hours, we're probably going to try to move back here. Nope, that's not going to happen. That's wishful thinking, though.
We can just not. Okay.
But yeah, these are the elected positions. Everyone else that's been nominated, full disclosure, there are other positions, obviously. The ops lead and the tech lead, those are appointed. I guess I forgot to include those. But you guys aren't really making the decision on those, but we can be open and transparent about it, I guess. Because eBoard appoints those. That's how it works. Okay.
What day are elections again?
Next Friday. Next Friday. Magic spell thingy what's it? Spoot Studios place. Be there. Remember, we're doing ranked choice voting. We're going to have a web app for that. I will re-explain ranked choice voting next week. But basically, the defining difference between that and what you're used to is that you rank your votes. You don't just choose one, you rank them. It's not very complicated. However, I'm sure people will have problems. And that's okay. That's fine. You can ask me, and I can go over it for you, because you might be thinking, and this is legitimate, you might be like, oh, how does that work? And I can tell you that offline. But the premise is, you rank your vote, you don't select your vote.
Why is ranked choice voting?
We're not getting into that right now?
Shut up, Zach.
Can I see your caps now?
Oh my goodness.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, let's move on before we avoid any drama. Okay, Chris and I guess it's Chris here?
No.
Hello, okay.
I put myself in.
Oh, okay, well, RITSEC is, what, soon? So come up and give,
Yeah, IRSEC. IRSEC's on April 20th, which is 2 weeks from now. Please sign up as soon as possible. The sign-up links are the same as they were last week. There is solo-irtsec.club. Yes?
this is going rough. Sorry we don't have those memorized, God. I'm just kidding.
Yes. I believe they're also in the newsletter, but I might be wrong. But we are ordering t-shirts today, so please try to get in as soon as possible. So that way, like, we have some estimate. We're gonna just buy a bunch, I believe.
Yeah,
So-
if you want to guarantee what size shirt you get, you have to sign up by today. You can still sign up after, but we cannot guarantee you will get a shirt that is the correct size. They heard me.
I don't know if you had anything else.
Nope, that was it. I didn't know if you knew we were doing that today. So good job.
There you go, Russ.
All right.
There's another one.
I'll post those links in Workplace right now.
Okay, yeah, definitely sign up for RITSEC. I remember I did it my, what?
Tell them to download the VM.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so definitely sign up for RITSEC. I remember I did it my sophomore year. It was a great experience, and it's like really invaluable, especially for your younger folks. So highly recommend. What's up, Scott?
If you feel like you know nothing, should you still do IRSEC?
Yes, 100%. That's like more of a reason to do it if you know nothing. So yes, definitely recommend signing up for even white team. Even if you miss the blue team signups, do white team. It's an invaluable experience either way. So. All right, Wixis IG, or Wesis, sorry, IG, Adriana. Awesome. Okay. Thank you. What is a group called? Just Wesis interest group, or? Okay. Yeah, I'm sure people will be able to find it. It's okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. Search. How do you search? Cool. Mental health. Nick.
Okay, hello, I'm back again. Mental health is a super important topic, and as we get closer to the end of the semester, it becomes crucial to definitely talk about all the opportunities or like paths that people have to reach out if they feel that they're having a rough time. So as part of that, we've been in discussions with the Golisano administration to ensure that there is enough mental health hours allocated for on-site counseling. Part of that will entail us getting some numbers of sorts of like what they could expect, so that way they can pay the mental health professional to be on site ahead of time for the hours that are needed, so that way the supply meets the demand. So this is an anonymous form. You can go into that. It does require an RIT email, but that's just that way people aren't submitting multiple times. It is an anonymous form. It is a yes or no answer. The only answer that particularly matters for what we're going to send is the yes. We need to know, again, it's anonymous, numbers-wise, if people think or believe that they should have more hours allocated for mental health on-site appointments for exam weeks this semester. So please, if you think that you might need the help, or you know someone who might need the help, fill out that form so we can get the numbers, and then we can send to Golisano's administration and be like, okay, these are the numbers of people that, in our community at least, that think that they might need those services. So can you please make sure that the proper resources are allocated for that? As always, please feel free to reach out to me or I imagine anyone else on eBoard if you ever feel that you need someone to talk to. That is all.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I think that's the last announcements. That was, the most important, not the most important, but one of the most important announcements is we are actually having education prizes. So, first place is going to be a swag bag. So, a swag bag will be pretty much all the swag. So, the lanyard, the hoodie that we're getting, t-shirt, both t-shirts, I believe. I think there's like one or two more things included in that. But, yeah, so you're going to get all of our swag. In second place, we'll just be getting a free RITSEC hoodie. And third place is a free RITSEC shirt. So these are just a little incentives to get you guys, to continue to do the challenges as we continue throughout the semester. Because I know it can be hard to find the time to do them in between school and club and everything else that you guys get going on. So, but if you're fourth, fifth place, consider grinding them out. And we're also, even for you guys who are like lower on the leaderboards, we're going to be releasing older challenges. And also, Scott, are we increasing point values of current challenges or? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to be. Are we doubling this week's?
Yeah, we're going to be doubling the Windows week, and we're re-releasing the Scripts week, which was the last week of last semester that we had pretty much no submissions for. So we're really re-releasing those probably tomorrow at some point, and those will be open, I believe, for a week or two.
Yeah.
We haven't decided how long we're going to be open for. But I'll be making the post and I'll have actual point values and everything.
Yeah, I think Scott and I looked at it and literally if you have done almost 0 challenges this semester, just by doing Windows week and scripting week, you could literally put yourself in the top 10 or something. And you have a legitimate shot at getting these prizes. So I would highly recommend giving these a shot because I think first place, second place, and third place, they're all up for grabs. So would highly recommend checking them out. But yeah, those are the prizes. So should be excited about that. Yeah. So last but not least, certainly not least, I just want to thank you to all our sponsors. So Platinum, Gold, Silver, Bronze, thank you to all of them. Couldn't be here without them. So round of applause for our sponsors for sure. Cool. Okay. So without further ado, finally, after all those announcements and 20 minutes of announcements, we are finally here. We can, fair. We can talk about Red Team Windows. Let me put my little thing on real quick. Thank you. Dude, that was a mistake. Yeah, I'm never doing one of those pulls again because literally it just started a whole pull brigade and yeah, never again. Also, I forgot to announce that the crab won the Who You Got, so yeah. Let's clap it up for the crab. Sorry. Nah, sorry. All right, so in all seriousness, let's get started. So just a quick overview. There's nothing on this slide. What? Oh, right, download the demo. That's the first part of my overview. Download the demo. I posted it in announcements and we posted in demo help, but please, if you're gonna do a challenge this week, which they're worth double points, download the demo because it's like 10 gigs, and if everyone's trying to download it at once right now, it's going to probably take an hour, so probably not. But download the demo, yeah.
It's at week11.ritsec.club. It's also posted in demo help, but now you just type it in your browser.
Woo! So anyways, an overview we're going to talk about today. It's kind of similar to, what's up?
If you have issues with the link in demo help, type it in your browser. I believe the link has HTTPS on it by accident.
Oh.
Which one? That was an accident. Yes, it's a redirect.
Okay, no more of that. We're just going right to the, okay. So finally, let's get started with the technical part of this, the education. Please, okay. So similar to Linux, what we're going to be talking about is in terms of Red Team, is first going to be talking about the pen testing side of Windows and kind of going over some nuances and some tools you can use on that. Because pen testing is important, but also we're going to be talking about more like the red team in terms of like red team, blue team side of things. So like kind of prepping for RITSEC and getting you guys familiar with what to expect in the upcoming 2 weeks when RITSEC comes around. So we're going to be going over all that and kind of talking about like how to red team Windows, what are the challenges of it, like how do you deploy to your Windows host, like all that kind of stuff. So very similar to Linux, and yeah. So going into, this is the second overview, this is the actual overview. Yeah, so we're going to be over exploitation and kind of talking about pen testing, and then we're going to be going over persistence and more of like the actual red team that you're going to see during RITSEC. So Metasploit, how can we talk about red teaming Windows without Metasploit, right? It's a very popular pen testing framework that we've all used in CSEC 101. So we've done the classic like MS-08 lab, and it's actually still super useful even if you're doing like red teaming. But for like pen testing in general, it's probably like my go-to tool. I know like when I did my OSCP, I used it a ton. Interpreter just makes it so easy to do like pivoting and like uploading files and stuff like that. And that stuff is definitely not trivial when it comes to Windows. So having that framework to use, super useful. As well as like DLL injection, beaconing, pivoting, all that stuff. Has a front end that I think we used in CSEC 101, which is Armitage, but it's kind of like average and not really worthwhile. So I just stick with like the command line version. But yeah, so we've all used MS-08, MS-17, which is pretty much the new MS-08 for like SMB exploits, is all available in Metasploit. It just makes it super easy to use. So and yeah, if you aren't familiar with Metasploit and you've never used it, the basic usage of it is you're just setting up a listening port that listens for a callback from Interpreter, and then after you exploit some sort of vulnerability or use some sort of Metasploit module, it's going to call back to that port, and then your Metasploit server is going to send over the Metinterpreter payload, run it on that server, and then you have a Metinterpreter shell calling back. So yeah, once you have the Metinterpreter shell, you can use stuff like Mimikatz and other stuff to do like credential gathering or like post-exploitation. A lot of those like Metasploit modules or Metinterpreter modules within Metinterpreter, you can like load them through like load and then the module. And this just allows you to extend the functionality of Metinterpreter. So I know there's, like I said, Mimikatz. There's also like a pivoting one, I forget what it's called, but it allows you to like set up like an SSH proxy within Windows that you can actually like proxy through, so you can actually pivot through Windows, which is usually, you can't do that like in a C, like if you just have a basic shell within Windows. So yeah. So the next big like pen testing tool that a lot of people like to use is PowerShell Empire, which is I guess more of a post-exploitation kit, but it's still a lot of times used to its modules, it kind of lend it more to pen testing. So like I said, it comes with the variety of modules is pretty insane. I don't know the exact number, but it has a ton of like post-exploitation, lateral movement, and a ton of persistence that makes kind of allows you to automate a lot of persistence, which is great. Sorry. Along with, in the post-ex particularly, is the PowerUp tool, which PowerUp is just a PowerShell, giant PowerShell script that got put into PowerShell Empire that allows you to kind of search for common privesc methods. So say you're like a regular user and you want to get to administrator on the host, you can use PowerUp to find different paths, and it will kind of like automate the whole process instead of you having to like manually search through the registry or like manually looking at services, like all that stuff. Automates all of it. It's great. And again, Mimikatz, you can never go wrong with having Mimikatz in any of your frameworks. But yeah, so it has a ton of different Mimikatz modules that allow you to extract credentials off the box. So just a quick note on like out in the wild exploitation. We're talking about all those frameworks, but let's be honest, that's usually like attackers and like adversaries aren't really going around like loading up Metasploit and just like launching all these like exploits at computers. They're usually doing it through the most boring mean, which is just email and actually phishing users and social engineering. So the most common seen is like the VB macros and emails and Word documents. You usually, it goes like this, right? You have Sally from HR who gets an email saying like, oh, so-and-so is requesting an invoice for this amount of money. And you're like, oh, what the heck? We don't remember selling these people this stuff or, having to pay for this service. So they open the Word document, you know, and they, in the Word document is a macro that's calling, that dumps an executable on their box and then calls back to the server of the attacker, and boom, Sally's from HR is popped, and if the correct mitigations aren't in place, now they're in your network, and yeah, so that's usually how it goes. It's not really cool or flashy, but it's kind of how it is. So I think back in like, when Sparsa and RC3 were still around, like 2 years ago, or a year or two, I think it was a year ago, I did like a whole presentation on like reversing a VB macro. And I mean, this stuff is like really basic. It's actually really trivial to reverse. And yeah, again, not very flashy, but that's just kind of how it's done. And it's really easy because most users are uneducated. So now, but we're kind of done with the actual pen testing frameworks and stuff like that. Persistence. We talked about persistence a little bit before. But persistence on Windows is rather difficult, in my opinion, a lot harder than Linux, just because of the fact that there's fewer holes to exploit, and Windows themselves nowadays the systems are more secure and have a lot of built-in security features that allow users to kind of have really fine-grained control over the system. So especially on Windows, persistence is a huge art, and you kind of have to get really crafty to actually maintain persistence on a box and keep your shell or keep your users on the box. So how do you stay hidden while also, you know, keeping your shells, keeping your users on there? So like one of the most basic persistence mechanisms that like almost all red teams will use is scheduled tasks. And these are kind of like the gotchas. Like if you forget to clear your scheduled task or forget to look at them, they'll definitely hurt you in the long run, but they're really easy to clear. So I mean, from scheduled tasks, you can pretty much do anything. You can run commands, run PowerShell scripts, run executables. You can also run these scheduled tasks as like local system, which is like the highest privilege on Windows. So you can, you know, perform really any action you want from scheduled tasks, but you can pretty much just go to, you know, WinKeyR, so like do the run, and then type that command, scheduled task, delete, and force, and that pretty much deletes all your scheduled tasks. So all their persistence through scheduled tasks is like gone. So you know, scheduled tasks obviously can't be your only form of persistence, but it's like a really great initial vector, and it also, again, it's just like a gotcha. Like if they don't clear it, then it's great for you because you can get callbacks and perform different actions on their host and be annoying. But if they do, it's not a big deal because it's just like one of those things that's really easy to set up. So SMB is another like really popular form of persistence and oftentimes uses lateral movement as well. So for most clients, and especially domain controllers, you usually need to leave SMB open for people to either grab files or to authenticate with the domain controller, or you know, a variety of different things Windows uses SMB for. It's a very popularly used protocol within Windows itself. So you know, firewall rule for Blue Team, their firewall rules will often include SMB and will often allow it out. So we can really use that to our advantage, either by putting a file share, sharing their entire C drive, and so that way we have access to their entire file system, or we can basically use like PSExec or SMBexec, which if you aren't familiar with how PSExec or SMBexec works, they're pretty much the same thing. They basically use RPC and SMB to execute commands remotely on your box. So if you have that SMB open, you have a valid user on the host, you can basically use those two, RPC and SMB, to create a service on the remote machine's host, and then run that service, and then run whatever command you're trying to run. So yeah, and PSExec in itself is very loud because, again, it creates a service, so that all shows up in the event log, and you can all see that. And blue teamers can catch you, doing that because not only is it creating a service, but the default service name for PSExec is PSExec, I think SVC, I believe so. And so that's very dangerous, and they can definitely see and stop your service and just cause you problems. So, but if you're using SMBexec, it actually creates a service, and then right after creating the service, it deletes it. So it pretty much creates and deletes a service for every command you run on the host. So it's a lot stealthier, and it kind of prevents them from seeing the service that you're running under. So just as a little tip. So the registry. So now we're kind of getting more advanced Windows persistence. And the registry is a wonderful place to start. because it's so vast and so like deep and has so many different layers that there's really so many places you can hide and so many different things you can use to your advantage in the registry. So the first and like the easiest ones to kind of detect, but also the easiest ones to implement, are the run keys. And so the run keys are going to allow you, are pretty much like your bash RC within Linux, right? So as soon as you log in, these run keys are going to run. And there's like two different versions of these run keys. There's the ones that run at user level, which are under HKey current user, so it's under that root in the registry. And then you have HKLM, which stands for HKey local machine, and those are going to run at like system level. So pretty much most red teamers are going to put their run keys under the HKey local machine because they want it running as the highest privilege. But current user is also just a place you should put them as well if you're red teaming. And if you're a blue teamer, you should be looking there as well. Well, these are great, and they seem like kind of a great go-to persistence mechanism. There's a tool called auto runs, which will actually detect all forms of registry persistence. So like these, and I know like ones I'll talk about later in the next few slides, are all caught by auto runs. So it's kind of lame. You can't really use it that much and actually keep them on the box for a long time. But yeah. Continuing on, so the next, like, the more advanced registry persistence is there's something called app-init DLL, and basically what this allows you to do is allows you to use basically this built-in registry key, and you can actually give it like a DLL name, so like, you know, my DLL or whatever, .dll, and you can just pass it that DLL, and every time, I think it's maybe create process, or it's some sort of like Windows function call, every time that is executed, or that DLL is actually loaded into that process. So you can basically have your DLL loaded into a variety of different processes, and then have that DLL actually run and execute code within the context of that process. So it allows you to essentially, you know, be injected almost into every process and have your DLL executing under them, which is super powerful because then you're just running code under every process. So how do they stop that, right? They have to actually go into the registry and like remove that. Now, while this is detected by auto runs, this is one of those settings that a lot of blue teamers may be scared to touch because like, oh, what's app-init DLL? I've never heard of that. So maybe, you know, they're just scared of it and they just don't touch it. And that's a lot of the challenges with blue team is knowing what looks normal, what doesn't look normal. But starting in Windows 7, Microsoft actually stated that they required all app-init DLLs to be signed. However, we can just turn this off with the required signed app-init DLLs, which is in the same location. So we can just turn it off, set that to 0, and then we can load unsigned DLLs through app-init, which is super cool. So I'm not sure why they even have that as a thing, that you have to sign the DLLs, because you really don't. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, if secure boot is enabled on the host, which nowadays people are starting to use secure boot more and more, it's going to be app-init is going to be disabled, and so you won't actually be able to do this. There's even, I don't think I talk about it here, but there's another app-init type thing called appcert, which does the same exact thing except for it just hooks different functions. So you can basically load DLLs through that. I think actually Rob Olson did that at ISTS. So if you're a blue teamer for ISTS, you definitely got popped by that. So anyways, last but not least, there's a few other quick registry things. So you can actually hijack the default firewalls. So in that registry key up top, you can basically go in there and there's like all the default firewall rules that like basically if you reset the firewall to the default settings, it will like load those values and like load those firewall options. We can actually go in and hijack these and like change them to whatever we want. So we could do like an allow all or like a block all. Well, we won't want to do that obviously because then we lock ourselves out. But you know, we could change it to however we want and basically set to the defaults to whatever's best for us as red team, which is usually allow all. And that's great because red team thinks, oh, I'm just using the Windows defaults. That's great. But really they're using our firewall rules. So that's pretty cool. And last but certainly not least is you can actually capture creds, which is with what's called a password filter. And so a password filter is essentially a hook into LSASS, which LSASS is like all authentication goes through the LSASS binary, which is like the service that the LSA uses to authenticate everything. And so using this password filter, it'll basically you just write a function within a DLL, and it will just go through, and you can just capture credentials that way and like write it out to a text file or like send it back to your server. So basically, capturing the creds every time they change it. So even if they do like net user, administrator star, right, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna change my password, I'm gonna lock red team out. When they change their password, boom, their creds that they changed it to just got sent back to red team, or got written to the text file that red team was gonna exfil later. So it's a really useful way to kind of capture passwords in Windows. So services. So just like a quick, really quick crash course on services, because we talked about this a ton, like in last semester and this semester. But all services are managed by the service control manager, which is like the main manager that kind of like tells all services what to do. Like, hey, you need to start, you need to stop, and like all services also need to report to the service control manager. So it's just kind of like the main overarching thing within services. And so service accounts run as like a few different accounts: local system, local service, and network service. Local system being really the one of interest, because this is like the root account on Unix hosts, and basically gives you like all the privileges and gives you access to pretty much everything. And so yeah, services essentially just allow you to perform background tasks and run important services. And so they're always usually running in the background. They don't really show up or have any like pop-ups for users, so they're really great to use as a red teamer. And so a lot of times, if you're new to Windows, you're new to blue teaming Windows, or really just new to Windows in general, you'll see SVC hosts a lot in the process list. And so all that is pretty much a shared binary for services. So if you are looking at the process itself, you'll see that like there's multiple services running under that binary. So these require DLLs to load, and Microsoft says that they basically should only be used by like legitimate Windows services, but you can actually load services through SVCO, so it is possible. So yeah, we can abuse services quite a bit, like I said. So for example, like the top example, we can just like configure a service to run as local system and like run our malicious binary. So say we have like a Metasploit payload, and we just want to run it and have it call back to our server as local system. We can just create a service, configure the service to run as local system, and configure the service to run our binary. And boom, now we have our interpreter payload calling back to us, or whatever binary, right? And that can be even a legitimate service, which is great. And if you're trying to take down services, a lot of time what red team will do is they'll actually change the user that's running as. So for a lot of like the popular services like DNS, DHCP, what else, like IIS, people don't know the exact service accounts that the service is running as. So what red team will do is like change it from local system to like local service, and then blue team will go look at it and be like, oh, what the heck is wrong? Like, why is my service not starting? And then they won't be able to tell a difference, like it's such a minute difference, and they're legitimate service accounts. So a lot of times they'll take blue team a lot of times to figure out like what exactly is wrong and why the service isn't starting. So that's like a great way to break services a lot of time. Yeah, and you can create your own service too. So like that's fully like accessible to you as like a programmer. So you can use like C# or C++, or I don't know, PowerShell. Maybe that'd probably be pretty annoying to do. But yeah, so you can write your own service, which is super useful, because then you can kind of include your own functions, include your own code. You can include like a Metasploit payload, or like add users, or do whatever. And it's really not very hard. I know Visual Studio has like a ton of templates for like C# and like C++. Even on my GitHub, I think under my gist or whatever, I have like a service you can just like pop into Visual Studio and just like compile, and it will run. So super easy to use. But even if you're using a service, unfortunately, it'd still be kind of hard to hide from like Process Explorer, because with the whole signing thing in Process Explorer, we can go options and view image signature, or verify image signature. That gets caught really easily, because it'll just Process Explorer will be able to tell that your binary is not legitimate at all and that it has no signature. And as a blue teamer, that's like a big red flag if there's this random binary just like running on my system with no signature. So obviously you could sign it and do stuff with certificates to get that looking legitimate, but still, it's kind of hard to hide. Like I said, you can still use SVC hosts. However, it's like really difficult to load your service under SVC hosts, and you also need to write a DLL, which can be kind of a harder learning curve to actually write that. So kind of just that cat and mouse game with how much effort you put in compared to how easy it is to find. So group policy. Group policy is wonderful because as a red teamer, it's very vast, like the registry. There's a lot of different options, and with all those options, there's plenty of places to hide and also plenty of things for us to abuse. So, and the other great thing about group policy is that we can use it to kind of interact with every client on the domain. So say like a blue team has a domain set up with like 3 Windows clients and we only have access to the domain controller. Well, that's fine. We can just use group policy to push out, binaries or whatever, like different settings to basically backdoor the system so now we can get access to them. So, if you're on the DC, on the domain controller as a blue teamer for Windows, it's very important that you like audit this and lock it down. But as red teamers, there's so many things we can do. So like we can pretty much push any registry persistence through group policy. So we can just create a registry option and just push it to all the clients. For example, like we can backdoor binaries, we can do what we talked about with the run keys, all that kind of stuff. And it's really straightforward to do. It's really, it's all through the GUI. We can also do stuff like enabling scheduled tasks to forge golden tickets, which we'll talk about, I think, in the next slide. Yeah, there's so many different options within group policy. It makes our job as a red team really easy to be really flexible with it. So you could also be really mean and disable different things for the blue teamers. So for example, we can disable access to the registry, control panel, access to certain programs. So we can say they can't open up CMD or PowerShell. We can print mean messages to people logging in, not like super mean, obviously. But these are all things we can just mess with blue teamers this way and really give them a hard time throughout the competition and kind of slow them down to actually like finding us or even prevent them from finding us through these options. So yeah, like I said, group policy is really expansive. So it's a great tool for us red teamers to kind of hide and use as persistence. And if the computer's not in the domain, so say it's just like an individual standalone workstation and it's in a work group, we can use the local policy settings and it kind of works the same way. All the options aren't quite there, so like the registry stuff isn't there in the local security policy, but we can still use it in the same way. So like we can still block certain programs or disable access to certain programs, stuff like that. So there's still some flexibility there. So Kerberos and golden ticket. I talked about this briefly, I think. I talked about this in some decent detail for Advanced Windows Week, but basically we can use Kerberos to our advantage through both golden tickets and silver tickets. So golden tickets, if you remember, it's a service granting ticket, or was it service grant, or was it a ticket? I can't remember what the hell it's called. But basically, golden ticket will allow us to basically authenticate with every service around the network. So we can basically create that golden ticket through the domain name, the SID of the KRB TGT account, which is the Kerberos account, and then also through the hash of that account. So that account is located on the domain controller, and we can just take the hash of it, get the SID of it, and create the golden ticket, and just authenticate with all these different services around the network. So say we want to psexec in to, like a client, we can do that through the golden ticket. We can authenticate with pretty much everything with that golden ticket. So if you have this golden ticket and you have it with domain admin privileges, the network is pretty much owned at that point, and you pretty much have access to anything on the domain. So it's really great as a red teamer to use that to your advantage because it's very silent and very hard to detect. And while it's kind of hard to get all the information to actually create one, once we do, we're pretty much golden, and we're good to, there's nothing we really can't get access to. So it's not, and blue team is not going to know until they see us using that ticket. So super useful method. There's also silver tickets as well, which I don't think I talk about. But silver tickets basically allow us to authenticate to a single service. So they will basically, they're a little less powerful than golden tickets, but still, if that's all we can get, then it's still pretty useful. So deployment. So if you're a red teamer, we talked about all those persistence mechanisms and like all these different ways to persist on Windows blocks, but how can we actually get on them and how can we actually, get that stuff deployed to the Windows host, right? And I'm super jealous as someone who like red teams Windows. I'm jealous of the Linux guys because they just have it easy, right? They can use like SSH and like all these different mechanisms, right, within Linux to remotely interact with their hosts. Windows, we definitely got the short end of the stick when it comes to this. Seems like we have the short end of the stick when it comes to everything, but we only have a few different options. For most Windows hosts, the only options are psexec, WinRM, and Ansible. If you're talking like older systems, then your only option is psexec. So like 2003 and XP, you really can only do psexec, but in newer systems, you can use Ansible and WinRM, and also SSH is starting to look like more promising on Windows. I know Windows has been like, or Microsoft has been pushing to get OpenSSH to be default on every like client, so that would be super useful, and I really hope they do. So if we can get that, that'd be great. But otherwise, we're kind of stuck with Ansible and WinRM, as psexec is really slow and not intuitive. So Ansible actually uses WinRM, so I usually stick with Ansible. And while Ansible is really slow, it's very consistent, and it kind of always works, and I know it's going to work. However, actually getting the host set up to accept that Ansible and actually use WinRM through Ansible can be a challenge. It's like not default, like the settings are not default settings, so you actually need to like start the WinRM service and actually run a PowerShell script to get everything configured. So super annoying, but like in the end it's worthwhile because it's going to make your life a lot easier than going and manually copying all the binaries on and off a system. So, but yeah, deployment, definitely a pain in the behind. So if you're red teaming Windows, definitely test your deployment beforehand. Because personally I've not done that, and I've run into a lot of challenges and then been locked out of boxes because of it. So just a word to the wise. So general challenges. So like I said, Windows, in my opinion, is being a red teamer on Windows is a lot more of a challenge, and you're going to run into a lot more challenging things. So the first being the Windows firewall, and this is like, and people in CDT know this, if you're in my CDT class, is the Windows firewall, super powerful. You can pretty much kick red team entirely out just through the firewall. Like you don't have to change passwords. So you can, you can disable the firewall, of course. You can go in, stop the service, disable the service, like do whatever, right? But that's going to come with problems when it comes in terms of deployment. So fun fact, you actually can't disable the Windows firewall and still use WinRM. You have to keep the firewall enabled to use WinRM. So say you go on every box and disable the firewall and then try to run your Ansible against the host, it will not work, and you're going to get a bunch of errors because WinRM does not accept requests if the firewall's down. So that's just like a built-in security feature of it. I don't know why, but so, and it's kind of lame too if you're kind of limiting the blue team's potential in terms of not being able to use the firewall. You're kind of like giving them the short end of the stick and like kind of pushing your problems onto them. So that's kind of like an argument to be had. Deploying, like I said, make sure you deploy beforehand. If you don't, you're going to run into problems. There's going to be things that go wrong. You're not going to be able to connect to boxes. And if you don't kind of plan for that time ahead of time, you're probably not going to get everything on the network. So UAC will cause a lot of problems on clients, and I've run into this at RITSEC. So fun story, I think it was my first time ever red teaming at RITSEC. Actually, there's like two stories here. So the first time I ever red teamed at RITSEC, I actually took everything down on the network, and they weren't able to deploy anything like to the host like an hour before the competition because my service, so I had like a service that like basically made one of the important firewall services depend on it. So because there's a problem with my service and my service didn't start, that means the firewall didn't start, and so therefore WinRM wasn't working. And so when like people went and tried to deploy stuff through WinRM and through Ansible to configure stuff for the competition, everything broke, and they're just like running around like, what's wrong? Like, why is the network down? Like, what is going on? And it was me. It was all my fault. And so that was a good learning experience. And then also, I found out the hard way that clients and UAC is a big problem. And so if you don't account for this, you're going to have a bad time. So the UAC comes into play when a client is not joined to the domain, so it's just like in a work group. And if you go to run Ansible against it with an administrator user, it will not work because it will try to like execute administrative commands, and because it's not elevated to administrator, it doesn't have like the high integrity that it needs, it won't work. So you actually, I had to go, the first year I did RITSEC, I had to go around to every individual Windows client and actually enable the administrator account and set a password on it, so I could actually use it through Ansible to deploy on my Ansible, because I couldn't do it through the regular like user account. So UAC will cause you a lot of problems, and so just account for that. If a client or whatever is not joined to a domain, make sure you're using the administrator account. That's just like, you have to, no way around it. So other things, I didn't really think of anything from the time I started presenting till now, but like, yeah, just like my advice for red teaming Windows, like stuff I've learned is plan for yourself to break a lot. Windows does crazy things and we don't know why. So if you're writing services or like, you know, deploying stuff, like expect for that to break, expect for problems to happen, because it would just be better if you plan for it and have backup plans. Yeah, so that's kind of like my advice with that. Don't think I have any other things. Oh, I have some like miscellaneous stuff too. Yeah, so I guess like this is like really random stuff, but like a lot of times, especially during RITSEC, we'll like backdoor shortcuts. So these always get people. So what we'll do is like we just put Chrome on the desktop and then like backdoor it to like a malicious binary. And then people will be like, oh, I'm gonna go launch Chrome. And they'll just double click on their desktop and then boom, they're popped. Really funny. So like the thing like every red teamer has ever done on Windows is they always backdoor sticky keys or the on-screen keyboard or utilman. So to do this, you can either A, replace the binary, so you can literally just go in and like copy CMD, name it osk.exe and delete the original, or delete the original sticky keys binary. Oh, and sticky keys, by the way, for those not familiar, is like when you press shift 5 times and then you get that annoying like beep sound. As a kid, that was really annoying when I was playing games and I was like pressing shift a lot. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is this? So that is sticky keys. And yeah, you can backdoor that binary. So when you're on the lock screen, you press shift 5 times, you get a command prompt, and it says local system. Yeah, so anyways, every red teamer ever will always do this. So if you want to find like a good way to know if your system is popped, just press shift 5 times. Chances are at RITSEC, it's going to like pop up a CMD prompt, so just be prepared for that. And also like a fun pen testing thing you can do is you can actually like basically manually gather credentials and hashes like Mimikatz. So if you go in the registry, you go to C Windows System32 config, there's going to be a sam.hive or like some file called sam and system. If you get those and then like extract those to a Kali box and then run sam.dump2 against them, it's basically like an output like Mimikatz. You get like all the hashes and everything. And so super easy way to extract credentials through that. So I did that a lot during my OSCP because, yeah, it was just fun to not use an interpreter. So and I think that's like all I have. I did pretty decent on time. I kind of rushed through a lot of stuff. But yeah, do you guys have any questions? Any like tips for RITSEC, anything like that? No? Okay. What? What's up, Joe?
Are there any good resources that like a beginner could go to learn more beyond the presentation?
Of course. So there's a lot of stuff scattered throughout the internet. For the most part, just looking up like general, for particularly blue team stuff, I think Mubix has a great like how to win CCDC guide, which has a lot of great Windows resources that I used when I was first starting out on Windows, like for CCDC and blue teaming. For red teaming, a lot of the stuff that I learned just came through either like Googling stuff. So like for registry, I would just Google registry persistence, as simple as that sounds. It's kind of really hard to point to one exact location that I learned everything from, because I just done a lot of Googling, a lot of research. MSDN, like Microsoft site, like you can just learn a lot through reading through the docs and like just looking and being like, oh, what's this do? And being curious like that. Yeah, so I don't really have a good answer to that question. It's a good question, but I don't have a good answer. I would just say, taking like, if you don't know something or confused about something in Windows, Google it. There's a good chance someone's done it. But if you're looking for like blue team strategies, how to win CCDC, it's on GitHub. Mubix adds to it all the time. There's a lot of great resources in there to kind of assist you to blue team. So. Thank you for the question. Any others? Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.